The purpose of these videos is to orient you to what components look like and how you act on them. If you haven't watched the Watch Me First video, please do that first, as it lets you know what to expect. In this video, we first cover managing the ATLAS.ti project as a whole. This means managing the project files, backing up and moving projects, which includes importing projects from earlier versions of the program, keeping the program up to date, and various outputting and exporting capabilities. Then we discuss the generic actions common to all components that we have been postponing until you were familiar with all the components from the earlier videos. This includes creating and renaming a component, searching through the whole project, including by user, so that will be a good time to explain the user system, and finally, a review of some actions that can be done to any component in the same generic way, writing a comment, sorting by component, and visualizing any component in a network. In Chapter 5, you read about managing the project as a whole. If you used earlier versions of ATLAS.ti, you know that managing the ATLAS.ti files, the project file and all the document files, often caused problems. Version 8 has gone to the other extreme. There's absolutely nothing to manage. When you begin a new project and add documents, ATLAS.ti manages the entire process, and you do not have direct access to either the project file or the document files, which are kept by ATLAS.ti in its own library. You only have access through the opening screen of the program that you can see here. This screen shows all the projects that I have. The version of the program you probably are using now is a bit more recent than version 8.0 that I'm using, so it's quite possible the list of your available projects appears as a listing rather than this tile view, which isn't terribly convenient to scroll through to find a project when you have many projects. Although I do get a list of the recently opened projects on the left. Right-clicking on a project allows you to rename it or to delete it, and one click opens the project. And then closing the project returns you to the opening screen. You can have multiple projects open, and that's about it for managing project files. It's all very controlled, and there's no longer anything you need to do at all. Now, there is one option you have when managing files that you don't have to do, but you can, and that is if you need to move the Atlas library that contains all Atlas's copies of your documents to another location from the one that Atlas chooses by default. You might need to do this if you have very large multimedia files, for example, and there's not enough space on the computer and you want to put it on a network, or if you want to have different people have access to the library. And you do that by closing out of the projects that you have open. And down here you go to Options and here Switch Library. And currently it's in the default location that Atlas sets up. And if you need to move the main library or set up a specific library for a specific project, you can do that by moving forward through these options. Moving on to backing up and moving projects to another computer or sending a project to another person, these all mean the same thing to ATLAS.ti and are done in the same way. Exporting what's called a project bundle. You go to the File menu and Export. A project bundle contains the ATLAS.ti project file and all the associated document files from the library in a single compressed file. You simply press the button and create it and save it somewhere, either as an archive or because you want to move it to another computer. I'll save it to my desktop. Then on another computer, you can open it in order to recreate and save the project on that computer by going to File, New, and Import Project Bundle. And it just does it, and it now exists on the new computer. So here is the project bundle I earlier saved. I won't do it here because the project already exists on this computer. Going back to File, New, this is also where you can import an old-style copy bundle if you're used to earlier versions of the program. Although if you're using the recent version 7, it seems to work out better to open version 7, save the project as a version 8 style project bundle, and then import it in the usual way into version 8 as an import project bundle. Sometimes you want to back up, not because you want to move the project to another computer or to send it to somebody else, but because you want to save a snapshot of the project as it exists right now before you move on to doing additional work, so you can always look back at how the project was at this point. Doing this is very easy. You simply go to File, Snapshot, and type the name that you would like. Atlas gives you a default name based on the name of the project and the date and time of the snapshot, and you simply press Create Snapshot, and it creates a version of the project file as it stands right now. Keeping up to date is similarly effortless. ATLAS.ti simply lets you know when a free update is available when you open the program, and you can go ahead and let it update. The available exports and outputs of the program are in a few categories. We just discussed exporting the whole project as a project bundle. You can also export the whole project as an SPSS job, which we discussed in the video on coded quotations. Exporting part of the project for further analysis is under Analyze and consists of options to export data as an Excel spreadsheet, which we also discussed in the video on coded quotations. And coming down to individual components, coming back to the Home tab, each manager, one for each component, has a Report button, which you've already seen, and lets you make a variety of relevant selections to output or print a subset or a selection of the items for that component. Now we come to the generic actions applicable to all components. First is the need to create a component before you can do anything. This is the guiding philosophy of ATLAS.ti. First, create a component, then do something to it. The easiest thing to remember is that in every case, it's always the first button on the left of the relevant ribbon or manager window that allows you to create a new one of whatever it is. So for the documents, the first button on the left allows you to add a new document. For codes, the Make a New One is still the first button on the left. And if I dock the manager as a tab in the central work area, the button is the first button on the left in the ribbon. And it's the same for every single component in the program. First button on the left. I'll float the window again because it's a bit easier to see. Any component can be renamed at any time from anywhere in whatever context you're seeing it, and the renaming automatically takes effect throughout the project. Whether you are seeing a component in a manager, or in a browser, or in the margin area, or in a network, or anywhere you see a component, wherever it is, just right-click on it and ask to rename. It's the same for every component throughout the program. The next common action is searching the whole project for a word, or more technically, a particular string of characters, which could be a whole word or part of a word. You do this in the Search menu, and you can ask to look through any set of the components, and ask it to look through either the name of the component, or the content of the component, or the comment text, or all three. I'll type, say, authentic, because I know I'll get a lot of hits in this project, which is about authentic learning activities, and here are the results. Each item has the string of characters authentic, either as a whole word or part of a word, and it tells you what it comes from, what part of the component it comes from, and you can browse to it appropriately. So I'll just double-click on the first one, and there it is. In addition to entering a search term, you can ask for who the author is. In other words, who created the component or who modified the component. I'll ask to see this reduced report, and I get 4 items. They're all memos, which Nick wrote, and include the word authentic. I see this one, however, the author is Super, which is a little unexpected. So I think I'll go back to the Home menu and the Memo Manager, and I'll look at that memo, and I'll see, it was edited or changed by Nick. So that is why it's come up on this report. This is a good moment to tell you more about the user system, which keeps track of who creates or modifies a component. We have the Memo Manager open, so I can just expand it a little to show you more columns. And we can see here is the author column, which is telling me who created each of these memos. And as we've also seen, this keeps track of who modified it. When you first open the program, it assumes you're not using the user system, and it defaults to a user called user. These say Super here because this was originally a version 7 project when the default user was called Super. If you do want to begin using the user system, usually in a team project, you go to the Tools menu and open the User Manager, and this allows you to create new users. And anytime you want to register as a different user, you ask to switch from the current user to a different user. Note that the user system only keeps track of who creates or modifies a component. It doesn't keep track of actions like who linked a code to a quotation or any of the other actions that are possible in the program. In the video on memos and comments, I demonstrated how comments worked in contrast to memos, so I don't need to repeat that here. The point to make now is that while I primarily demonstrated in that video code and quotation comments, I want to emphasize that absolutely every component has a comment wherever you see the familiar yellow icon with lines of text. Absolutely everything has its own comment area. Similarly, anytime you see a column, and I'll open this window up so that we see all the columns available. Any column can be sorted simply by clicking on its column header once, and then clicking a second time to reverse the order of the sort. And similarly, absolutely any component can be displayed as a visual item in a network. As usual, by right-clicking on the item and saying Open Network. Here, as you can see, the density is 5, meaning there are 5 other codes linked to this code. So when I open the network for the code 3A, high stakes all, it brings in the code and also the 5 codes that have been previously linked to it. As well as bringing in any of the regular components into a network, another network itself can be dragged in. So I'll bring in this one, pending, and it appears as a box in the network as usual, and I can import the neighbors. So maybe I'll import all the codes that are included in that network. And then maybe I will remove from view the actual icon for the network, having accomplished bringing in all the codes that were in that network. And the final common action is a wonderful addition to version 8 of the program, undo and redo, for multiple undos and redos of any action you've taken using any component. So this completes the orientation to the ATLAS.ti project as a whole, and we now invite you to read about any other component in Chapter 5 you've not already read about, and then watch its component orientation video.